Good autumn evening, dear listener. Fallen leaf, please make yourself comfortable. Put the kettle on for a mug of hot cocoa or tea. When it's ready, wrap yourself in a warm, soft blanket. Settle into your favorite chair or nestle into bed. Let your shoulders drop, your jaw loosen, and your breath fall into a gentle rhythm, slow in, soft out. Tonight we will walk together beneath October's lanterns. In the small town of Everloam, the streets remember. Not with loud stories, but with leaf-soft memories, the kind that drift against your ankles like friendly cats. When wind moves through the maples, Everloam sighs and the lamps along the lanes answer with a responsive hush, a warm dim that says, "You are home." Mira loved these evenings best. The evenings that seemed to fold themselves around you like a woolen cloak. She would step out just after the first lamps woke, tugging on a sweater the color of burnt sugar, closing her door with a click that felt like a period at the end of a long sentence. Thimble, her small gray cat, would trot to the threshold, blink slow approval, and return to his favorite corner by the radiator, where a miniature sun lived all winter long. Outside, the town offered her its soft map of light. Old bricks stitched by small bridges, windows with lace curtains, rooflines carrying the season like open palms catching leaves. Mira took the lantern path, a lane strung with paper lights that bobbed in the breeze. Each lantern was hand-painted by someone in Everloam. Stories brushed on in careful strokes, geese on water, crescent moons, hands around mugs, a red scarf captured in diagonal flight. She walked slowly, matching her steps to the hush of the evening. The air held the faint sweetness of apples resting in wooden crates, a whisper of wood smoke, and the kind of cool that makes the heart grateful for pockets. Mira slid her hands into hers and listened. The town makes a music all its own in October. Gutters ticking with leaf taps. The river, not far away, moving like a quiet idea. A porch swing murmuring. A bicycle coasting home with a contented click. At the corner where the lane bent toward the river, Mira paused beneath the lantern painted with two cupped hands. She had painted that one last year. The hands were her grandmother's, drawn from memory, offering a steaming mug. Her grandmother had taught her the rituals of comfort. How to warm a cup with a swirl of hot water. How to breathe over the surface of tea so that it told you when it was ready. How to wait without impatience, as if waiting were itself a kind of warmth. Evening, Mira. The voice came from the bench near the willow, where Juniper Gray, who sold ribbons and raincoats, was knitting something the color of early dusk. Evening, Junie, Mira said, taking a seat at the other end of the bench. Is it a scarf? A long one, Juniper smiled, needles moving like small, patient birds. For the fairy watchman, says the fog tastes colder this year. They sat in the comfortable silence that belongs to old friends and to towns that believe in soft endings. Above them, the lantern swayed. Did you ever read the leaves today? Juniper asked after a time. Mira shook her head. I swept them. They sounded like paper sliding into envelopes. Juniper's eyes crinkled. Then perhaps they have letters for you. Have you been to the library lately? Mira glanced toward the river. The Library of Leaves was more rumor than place, a sweetness Everloam told its children, then kept telling itself because it liked the way the words tasted. A library shelved with glass front cases, each holding a pressed leaf in place of a page, each leaf doing what leaves do best, whispering. I haven't, she said. Maybe I will. Juniper slid a small object across the bench. It was a maple leaf folded neatly into an envelope shape, held closed by a single loop of green thread. For when you're ready, she said. From the path itself, it fell on my lap like it had your name in it. Mira smiled, the kind of smile that comes with a soft exhale more felt than heard. She held the leaf envelope to her chest and the paper lightweight warmed under her sweater's knit. The evening deepened by a gentle shade. Thimble, sensing some shift in the world's wool, would surely be rolling to one side at home, accepting sleep as if it were his idea. "Good night, Junie," she said, and Juniper, who knew how to end a conversation the way one ends a lullaby, nodded and lifted her knitting, letting the needle's quiet clink say the rest. Mira took the footpath that wound along the river. Lantern reflections floated like coined bright promises on the surface. The willow's long hair combed the current, and the Ferris bell, small as a spoon's tap, breathed a polite note into the fog. On its little deck, the watchman wrapped in a battered coat lifted a hand. She returned the greeting with the leaf envelope. When she reached the wooden shelter where the old brass clock lived, she stopped. The clock was not town property. It belonged to anyone who needed it, which is almost the same thing as belonging to everyone. Its face was simple. 4 numerals softened by thumbprints, a pair of hands that moved with a generosity that other clocks envied. The clock had one trick, if you could call gentleness a trick. It knew how to slow itself when the night asked for it. Mira sat on the low bench beside it and opened the leaf. Inside, in the faintest script, were words that felt like warm breath on her ear. Walk slowly enough that you can hear the stitch at the hem of time. Sip something warm. Let the lanterns carry part of your weight. The river will cradle the rest. She smiled again. Smiles came easy in October, and looked up at the clock. The second hand had become shyer, stepping with a softer foot. The minute hand, hearing its friend's gentler pace, obliged with a courtesy bow. In a town that kept its promises, time knew how to be polite. She took the thermos from her bag. Steam rose, cinnamon, black tea, honey, a touch of milk. She poured, warmed her hands around the cup, and breathed. In for 4. Pause. Out for 6. The river breathed back. Fog tucked itself neatly at the water's edges. A duck wrote a quiet sentence with its wake. As she drank, Mira thought of the library of leaves. If she went, what would she check out? A chapter on the first rain after a long summer? A page that smelled of a barn's warm hay? A paragraph describing the exact weight of a kitten falling asleep on your ankle? She sipped. The possibilities unspooled like Juniper's scarf. A child's laugh, distant but clear, rang like a bell in another street. Footsteps creaked over an old bridge plank and then softened back into the quilt of the town. A bakery somewhere closed for the night. A metal latch answered in the affirmative. The brass clock hummed, not with mechanics but with company. It is a special happiness to share silence with a kind object. Mira set her empty cup back into her satchel and stood, moving the way a bookmark slips into a page without startling it. The night folded around her again, accepted her shape, and held her. She touched the clock's case, a thank you, and continued along the path as the last lanterns regarded her with companionable light. That was when she heard it, the whisper of pages turning. Not inside a house, not from a window cracked to let the night in, but from the path itself, from the scene where the lane met the river. She knelt, and the lantern above leaned a little nearer. Between stones, tucked with a careful hand, rested another leaf envelope, this one oak brown with a ruffled edge. Mira eased it free. You are close now, it read inside, in a script that had the kindness of a teacher who never once raised her voice. The library doors open for those who arrive with warm hands and a slower breath. Bring a memory you don't mind sharing. Take only what you can carry while sleeping. I can do that, Mira whispered. Her breath made a cloud that drifted toward the river, then dissolved into the mouth of the night. She could feel in her shoulders that pleasant heaviness that comes when a day has finally agreed to be over, when you recognize that you have done enough, and enough is plenty. She turned toward home. The cat would be a small, patient question mark on the quilt. The kettle could be warmed again. The bed would hold the outline of her body as if it had practiced for it. Tomorrow, perhaps, she would find the library of leaves. Perhaps the town would find it for her. Everloam was good at such things. At lowering a book from a shelf so gently that even the dust enjoyed the ride. She walked back under the painted hands and the geese and the scarf in flight, back past the bench where Juniper's needles counted the tender arithmetic of wool, back along cobblestones that remembered the exact shape of her step. When she reached her door, she paused to listen to the hinge sigh. Inside, Thimble lifted his head, yawned a tooth-flash yawn, then kneaded the quilt as if preparing a soft sentence to sleep inside. Mira set the leaf envelopes on her bedside table, poured the last of her tea into a smaller cup, and carried it to the window. Rain had begun, a dozen cautious taps on the glass, then 100, then a patient 1,000. The sound wrapped the room. She pulled the extra blanket over the quilt, an autumn weight promise, and slid under it like a letter into an envelope, addressed to the quiet. "Good night, October," she said. And October, in Everloam, said it back. Morning came with a softened edge, as if the sun were holding its hat in its hands and asking permission to enter. Mira woke slowly, the way one rises from a warm bath, reluctant to cause a ripple. Thimble had taken the form of a comma at her knees, inviting her to continue her sentence later. She brewed tea, buttered toast, and tucked the 2-leaf envelopes into the pocket of her coat. Outside, Everloam offered the kind of chill that improves concentration. The streets seemed drawn in pencil, details sharp and sincere. She followed the river until the path presented her with a door she had never noticed. 2 planks the color of chestnut, set into the embankment, framed by ivy that wore the night's rain like jewelry. The door opened with a hush. Inside, the library was the library because there could be no other. Warmth gathered in corners. Lamps glowed like small moons trapped in amber. And along the walls, glass front cases, floored to ceiling, each shelf lined with folios that were not folios but shallow drawers. Each drawer, when pulled, revealed a single pressed leaf mounted on cream paper, labeled in a hand both precise and kind. Sunday afternoon after the first frost. Bread dough rising beside a radio. A father buttons a child's coat. No one stood behind a desk, and yet Mira felt welcomed. Her footsteps went quiet on the polished floor, and the library seemed to draw its shoulders up in pleased anticipation. She pulled a drawer at random. Inside, a ginkgo leaf the color of tea with milk had been pressed so that its veins shone like a gentle map. As she leaned closer, the leaf spoke, not with a voice exactly, but with a warmth that arrived in her chest all the same. A memory of walking hand in hand with her grandmother past a fence lined with jars of wildflowers, lids loose enough to admit a bee's dream. She tasted clover honey. She heard a distant rooster practicing. Mira's eyes filled, not with sadness, but with the relief of finding something you worried you'd misplaced. She closed the drawer carefully and opened another. Quiet porch during soft rain. The leaf inside was maple, a small one. It released a chair's long exhale, the heavy-knuckled knock of drops on hollow steps, the hush of 2 friends saying nothing because nothing was required. She wandered. She read. She learned the library's language. To open a memory was to be held by it, then returned gently to yourself, as if a kind usher had guided you back to your seat. At last she found a table with a pot of pencils and a stack of cards. To borrow, leave a memory in trade. Read the sign in small, considerate letters. Describe it in as few words as you can. Fold the card once. Slip it into the blue box. The library will do the rest. Mira thought. She wanted to borrow only what could travel besides sleep without waking it. On her card, she wrote, "The weight of a cat choosing your lap." She folded it, placed it in the blue box, and waited, because waiting here was a kind of reading. A drawer near her shoulder slid out on its own. Inside lay an oak leaf, burnished like a well-loved table. "A room that makes a home of you," its label read. She lifted the page, heart careful. The leaf released warmth. Radiator heat blooming too slowly to notice until you grin. The scent of old paper and soap. The sense that if you set a mug down anywhere in the room would be happy to hold it for you until you remembered. She hugged the page to her sweater and felt herself lengthen like a cat in sunlight. When she slipped the leaf back into place, the library purred, no other word for it, low and contented. The blue box clicked. Mira opened it to find a slip acknowledging her trade. "Thank you," it said in that same patient hand. "Your memory will keep another traveler warm." She left with empty hands but an arm's full heart. Back on the path, the town smelled faintly of cinnamon. Somewhere, Juniper laughed the way bells might laugh if bells had knitting to do. The ferry's watchman saluted a fog bank and was rewarded with a clear lane across the river. Mira walked home slowly enough to hear the stitch at the hem of time. That evening, before the lamps woke, she set a kettle to sing, found the soft blanket, and opened a notebook to a blank page. She drew 2 lanterns, one for the library, one for the clock, and wrote beneath them, "Go on. Keep reading." The next night bore the hush of a theater waiting for the first note. Mira took the path to the brass clock with a pouch of loose tea, a small jar of honey, and a leaf pressed between parchment. The river moved like a long exhale. The willow combed its hair with infinite patience. A single star took its time appearing. She placed the leaf on the bench, then touched the clock's case. "If you don't mind," she said, because Everloam had taught her the grammar of politeness with objects. The second hand dipped, which in clock etiquette was the same as a nod. She wound the key, 1 turn only, and felt resistance ease. The clock sighed, and time obliged by loosening its collar. Minutes stretched out like cats. The evening had more room inside it. This was not magic that stole from tomorrow, but kindness that recognized how much a day swells with quiet when given permission. Mira poured tea, the river adding its own small steam to the cup. She set the honey aside in case someone else needed it more, a courtesy her grandmother had sworn kept sweetness in circulation. As she drank, she thought of people she loved moving through their evenings in other towns, other rooms. She imagined sending them this extra minute, this softened breath. Perhaps time, like bread, grows better when shared. A boy in a rust-red coat approached, hat held in his hands. "Does it really slow?" he asked, eyes wide and winter bright. "It learns to," Mira said, "when the night asks politely." He nodded, solemn as a conductor. "My mother's on the late ferry. I wanted to make the wait not bite." Mira shifted, making room on the bench. They listened. The clock breathed. The river narrated. The lanterns offered commas to anyone's sentence who needed to catch their breath. When at last the ferry bell rang, soft and certain, the boy stood. "Thank you," he said, not to Mira alone, but to the clock, to the bench, to the willing night. She stayed long enough to see the moon unstitch itself from a passing cloud, then gathered her things and rose. As she touched the clock's case again, a vibration hummed in the wood, a pocket of gratitude. Time had enjoyed itself. The final night of October arrived folded in silver. A whisper of first frost trembled at the edges of lawns, turning leaf veins into filigree. Mira prepared a cocoa the way her grandmother had taught. A spoon of dark powder, a ribbon of milk, a circle of sugar drawn 3 times as if to calm the spoon. Then hot water poured in a line so thin it sounded like silk being unrolled. She carried the mug to the window and opened it an inch. The town entered. The faint, clean smell of frost, the shy hum of someone practicing scales 2 streets over, the soft drum of her own pulse threaded with the houses. Thimble leapt up and arranged himself against her hip like punctuation. She thought of the library, the leaf labeled a room that makes a home of you. She thought of the clock, its second hand lifting like a lullaby conductor. She thought of Juniper Gray's long scarf traveling through fog on the shoulders of the ferry watchman. She thought of the boy in the rust-red coat and the way gratitude can be taught without a single lesson. "Good night," Mira told the window, and the window made no argument. She slid under the quilt, tucked the blanket around her shoulders, and placed her palm over the slow lantern of her heart. In for 4. Pause. Out for 6. The town matched her. The river braided sleep from their breaths. October leaned close to kiss her forehead with the cool lips of its last night. Somewhere, a leaf, pressed between pages, decided that memory was a kind of lantern you could carry even in the dark. Mira dreamed, not of events, but of textures. Wool against wrist, steam against lip, rain against glass, a cat against a comma of time. In the morning, she would rise, and the season would find another gentle way to say hello. For now, she floated, lantern light on a slow river, carried by a town that remembered to be kind. Good night, dear listener. Good night.